You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Hi, it's Holly, and I'm in Manchester, England at the moment, and Mia and Jessie are away on a family holiday in Fiji. So we're in different parts of the world, but we really wanted to just jump on and talk to you ahead of the proper show today. We're leaving the show in very capable hands today. You're going to get a regular Mamamia Out Loud with Claire Murphy, Clare Stephens, Gemma, and they're going to do an amazing job. But we also knew that the way we were feeling in different parts of the world would reflect the way a lot of Out Louders are feeling, and we just wanted to sort of give you all a virtual hug, I guess.
And we've never actually had an instance where all three of us are away for a regular show, and we had no intention of jumping on today, but after what happened at Westfield Bondi Junction on Saturday, we just felt that we had to.
We've all been really shaken by the news out of Sydney while we've been away, as I know that all Australians have been, I think, as well as the international community. The shocking, brazen and horrific nature of the crimes that took place on Saturday afternoon, the first day of the school holidays, with thousands of shoppers in Westfield Bondi Junction, has just absolutely shaken us. And I feel particularly affected by the killing of Dr. Ash Good and the attack on her 9-month-old baby Harriet. That has just been something that feels impossible as a national and international community to process.
I've been in Manchester for a very quick family visit. It's my dad's 80th birthday party, and my dad isn't very well. So it's been very weird week for me because it's my dad's 80th. I've been putting together all these photos, like, you know, a slideshow of his life, and reading all these lovely words from people about him. And when I was thinking about it this morning and what I wanted to say on this call, because nothing we can say is going to change the horror of the situation, but it's what violence takes from us, right? Is that possibility of future and celebrations and all the things that won't happen, and the privilege of getting to live a long life like my dad's doing, even though the later years are certainly shaky. You know, that's what was taken from these people, mostly women, on Saturday. And we just kind of really wanted to have a quick talk about it, didn't we? Because the first thing I did, it was the top story here, was breaking on the radio all over everywhere here. Top story was obviously jump on and say, "Are you two okay?"
Those images and those videos that have come out, the Westfield element or the shopping centre element is universal for a lot of Australians, especially Australian mothers who have spent so many hours walking up and down. You know, I've sat on a level that I'm now seeing on world news, breastfeeding my baby, and I've changed nappies and all of that. And one of the first things I thought when I started seeing footage was, oh, that's the level where all the baby shops are. That's where I go to get my baby clothes. And that's where I was 48 hours ago with Luna, who is only a few days older than that baby girl, Harriet, had her in my pram. And so it's the proximity, I think, that has shaken us. I have walked through Bondi Junction so many times and interacted with Out Louders, chatted to them as they kind of, you know, experience their maternity leave or whatever it is. The horror of what happened to a mother and a baby in a place that feels so safe, that feels like third space. We have our home and our work, and then we have this space that we can go to where we feel we can take our babies and be engaged, and the things that have crossed our minds, the sliding doors of being there at that time and how your life is dictated through nap times and feeds. And the horror to me is what she saw, and that she then died not knowing if her baby would be okay. I mean, the bravery of that mother is just something that I hope she can be remembered by, because that was remarkable that she managed to save that baby's life.
I think that when something like this happens, the things I compare it to is 9/11 and the Lindt Cafe siege, where it's just so random. It's a normal place where you would feel safe, where it would never cross your mind to be vigilant in the way that it would in almost every other public space. You know, I know people are wanting to rush to anger and indignation And I think that that's a much more comfortable place to be, one of fury and indignation. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but the reason we rush to that is that the reality of it, the randomness, the senselessness, the fact that it could have been any of us, that's just too scary. It's too confronting and it's too distressing. So to move past that, we try to say something should change and it's someone's fault and something should have been done and someone should do better. And, you know, we're recording this 24 hours after it's happened and there are still a lot of details to come and maybe there will be lessons to learn, but also maybe there won't. Maybe this is just one of those tragic things that is just tragic and that makes all of us feel so incredibly vulnerable.
I think there is a lesson. I think it's the same lesson that we learn over and over and over again when senseless, awful, violent things puncture our worlds in whatever way. And it's, you have no control over anything really other than how you treat the people around you. Tell the people that you love them. You know, love your baby, love your friends, you know, the people who left their homes that day to do those ordinary things. And look, we know this is a very specific shopping centre in a very specific place, but it is the randomness that's scary. But it's that thing that everybody who left their homes that day, the lives well lived, you know, from these beautiful, mostly women, not only women, who have been murdered in this way. You know, the people who love them will remember them always. The only lesson over and over again is, you know, love the people you love hard and live your life with kindness and respect. The only thing that buoyed me yesterday was, and I know that there will be so much attention paid to this as there should be, is the extraordinary bravery of some people in that shopping centre and of Police Inspector Amy Scott, because running towards that danger, doing what needed to be done, and then she tried to do CPR on that man after she stopped him. That is the definition of grace. She saved so many lives. She changed so many lives. There is extraordinary kindness in the face of this horror, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. The people who are trying to help are often harmed. And I think that the lesson is the same one we're taught over and over again about humanity, which is you don't know what's going to happen. You've just got to love everybody as much as you can. And I know that sounds really soppy and it's probably very informed by the fact I'm about to say goodbye to my family again after this week of being with my unwell dad. But that's the lesson I'm choosing to take 24 hours after it.
To everybody who's been affected, I know you don't have to live in Sydney. You don't have to know any of the victims. You don't have to have been to Bondi Junction, Westfield to be shaken by this, to feel incredibly distressed and vulnerable. We're sending all our love to all our beautiful Outlouders and to the victims and to the brave people who helped and who tried to help. We're thinking of you all and we are giving you all a big hug and we'll be back in your ears very soon.
We will. And we're leaving you in the very capable hands of our colleagues, and I'll be back with you on Wednesday.
Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud, what women are actually talking about on Monday the 15th of April. I'm Claire Murphy and I'm driving this train Holly Wainwright style. Normally I'm the host of our daily news podcast, The Quickie. And today we do have a very different show for you Outlouders because your regular lineup of hosts, none of them are here. Holly, Jessie and Mia are all on holidays for today. So coming up on the show today, of course, Australians are grieving the unthinkable acts that took place at Westfield Bondi Junction. We are going to talk about that Bruce Lehrmann verdict and the child star rebrand that has gone horribly wrong, or has it? So let's get into it. I'll introduce you to today's step-in hosts. I'm Claire Murphy, normally from The Quickie, Mamamia's daily news podcast, and joined today by not Jessie Stephens, but Clare Stephens.
I am Claire and I am the host of Cancelled and But Are You Happy? I'm taking a short break from maternity leave to be here today.
And for her first appearance on Mamamia Out Loud, please welcome Gemma Bath.
Hi, yeah, what a sombre day to start and be in the chair for the first time. Feels weird to do this, but I might just give a little bit of a background so you know who I am. I'm a writer and an editor here at Mamamia. I've been here for about 5 years. I'm also the host of one of our podcasts, True Crime Conversations. And when I'm not at work, I am a mum to a 15-month-old little boy called Max. And I live very, very close to Bondi Junction, Westfield. So a very strange day to be in your ears, but hopefully we can really unpack it and make you all feel seen, because I know it's something that I've been really struggling with this weekend.
But first, we have to talk about the biggest story of the day.
Well, tonight news we hope we'd never have to deliver in this country. A mass killing at Sydney's biggest shopping centre.
So Australians are feeling really shocked today, 2 days later, after the Westfield attack. Heartbroken, devastated, all of the emotions after what unfolded at Westfield Bondi Junction at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Such a normal time for, families, kids, everyone to be out and about. A 40-year-old man entered the shopping centre and he senselessly attacked innocent shoppers just going about their ordinary Saturday afternoon. It's now a few days later and I feel like that shock is still really palpable. Let's just walk through the details first of what actually happened. Claire, you've been covering it really closely on the Quickie. Where are we at? What are the latest details with Saturday's tragedy?
Well, first up, some good news. We've just heard that the young baby who was caught up in this attack and who was also attacked with a knife is recovering really well and has really rallied over the last 24 hours, which is really, really good news. We also heard this morning that one of the victims who was taken to hospital for treatment has been released too, but there are still several more in hospital. At the time of us recording this, 6 people have lost their lives. 5 of those are women. One of them is a man. We'll just quickly take you through who all these people are. It's really important to understand too that we don't know of the Out Louders listening to this whether these people are your friends or your family, and if they are, our deepest condolences. But 38-year-old mum, Ashley Good, which I think is the one that's hitting us all the hardest, she was attacked by this man, as was her 9-month-old baby, who was in a pram, reportedly, at the time, not in her arms. She then desperately grabbed her baby and ran towards 2 men for help, and 2 of the men took her baby and helped the baby while she was receiving treatment on the floor in Westfield. 25-year-old Dawn Singleton, daughter of renowned Australian businessman John Singleton, she also died. She worked at a White Fox store and her colleagues described her as really sweet and kind-hearted. Faraz Tahir is the only man who has died in this attack, and in the aftermath of what happened, all the disgusting slurs that were thrown about on social media as to who this attacker was, it's really poignant that the only man who was killed in this attack is a 30-year-old Pakistani national who only arrived in Australia a year ago fleeing violence. He'd moved from Brisbane down to Sydney for work, and this was his first day shift as a security guard.
And he was protecting people is what we've been
Yep, he was trying to protect people and lost his life.
There were initially people who said, where were Westfield Security? Where were Westfield Security? This is where
they were
Westfield
right there.
Security
They were doing their best to stop this man. 47-year-old Jade Young, she's an architect, mother of 2, also a member at Bronte Surf Lifesaving Club, who cancelled their events yesterday in the wake of her death. 55-year-old Pikri Adachi, she's an artist, a designer. She is originally from Georgia, where she studied performing arts, moved to Australia and then studied business admin at Sydney TAFE. The victim who was identified today is Yizhuan Cheng. She's a Chinese national who was studying here in Australia. And we know that the attacker is a 40-year-old man. He was shot dead by police, or one lone police officer. A woman, which I don't know how I feel about that. I feel kind of proud that she was the one who took control of this situation. We know that people rushed in behind her to help her should she need support, but she assessed that situation, saw a man with a knife, saw the victims, saw him rush at her. She told him to put the knife down. She warned him. She took the shot. And I guess the thing we're struggling with the most today, Clare Stephens, is just, God, how close to home this is.
I also live just up the road from Bondi Junction, Westfield, and spend a ridiculous amount of time there. And it is the place that you feel safe and where I really feel for the family of Ashley Good, because when you're a new mum and sometimes you feel annoying, you feel like when you're out, you're conscious of your baby and you're conscious of irritating other people. And Bondi Junction has the best parents' room, and mums joke about it, that you spend all your time there because of how great the parents' room is. And as Jessie said earlier, where this attack happened was so close to the children's shops, the parents' room, and that makes me feel really sick. The other thing that really has struck me looking at the footage is that he attacked women because it seemed like he wasn't physically intimidated by them. So he seemed to sort of be lunging at people, and when a larger man lunged back at him, he would back off. And you can just imagine that if you're a mum with a pram, you're so defenseless. This idea of whether there was misogyny behind it, whether this was an attack on women, it still is, because the fact is that women aren't as physically strong generally, and you have this man attacking them, and it's so sickening. I've seen so much about people who were there, people who had close calls, and I just think there are so many people touched by this who are not going to be the same, and who a shopping centre is no longer going to feel like a safe space, which is ridiculous.
That's what makes me feel the most anger, is that this man has taken away that safe space for us. Because just last night I was talking to my mum on the phone, and she says to me, I have an appointment to go to today, and it's at a Westfield. And I was like, oh shit, what do I say to her? Like, do I tell her to be careful? Do I tell her to be wary? She's in her 70s. She can't defend herself from a 40-year-old man with a butcher's knife. And now this has happened. And the response we'll hear about it is from people who will say, but not all men, and will point out the really good men in that building, the bollard holding hero and the lifeguard who plugged bleeding wounds and the brothers who held the baby. But it's like, we can't trust that you're not going to be that man.
It's enough men.
Women
are dying every week.
It's enough, man, and we can't trust that you're not going to be that guy. And rather than deal with the aftermath, we get the hero stories. And it's just, God, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of not having a result. There are government programs, and we shame men, and we show them our pain and our fear, and that we can't even breathe in public without the fear that one of you will bloody murder us. And then they're like, not all men. Stop. Men, you have to fix this. You have to fix this. We can't even bloody defend ourselves. You need to fix it.
I can hear that you're already at anger, Claire, and I feel like I'm not even there yet. Like, I can't feel anger yet because I'm still just so sad. I think for me, I'm 6 months ahead of Ashgood, and I know we're focusing on that story, but it's because Claire and I are new mums. Jessie is a new mum. So that's the story that it's human nature. You relate to the story that kind of fits your own world. And I'm 6 months ahead of Ash. My baby is 15 months old. As I parented him this weekend, I just kept thinking about the small details, the fact that my son, I'm still the only one sometimes, most of the time, that can settle him, that he wants to be with, that can put him back to sleep. And the thought of baby Harriet, when she eventually goes home from hospital, not having her mum to be there, they're the details I can't get out of my head. The fact that her mum won't be there when she turns 1. And the difference between a 9-month-old baby and what I'm experiencing 6 months later is chalk and cheese. My son is walking. He says words. He has a personality. He says mama. At 9 months old, he did none of that. I was only seeing glimpses of him. And Ash is not going to experience any of that. And those are the details. And it's not just Ash. I mean, I'm focusing on her, but think of Dawn Singleton. Like, she was supposed to get married this year. She'd just bought a wedding dress. Her family now has to call that boutique and say, my daughter's never going to wear that dress. Like, though the other mother of 2, it was the start of school holidays this weekend. Does that mean forevermore those kids are going to be triggered whenever a school holiday comes around? I think by putting yourself in the shoes of these families and the ripple effects that will happen for years, decades, these people's entire lives, all because one man decided to do this on a Saturday afternoon.
I mean, I think it's one of those times where the fact that we see imagery, when this used to happen, you didn't see imagery, but now that people can film stuff and put it up straight away, you're seeing stuff. You're seeing the chaos and the confusion that everyone's like, sorry, did that just happen? I think a guy just stabbed someone. It doesn't make any sense. And I think what you say about that baby coming home from hospital and crying for a mum that isn't there and not knowing why mum isn't there, that tragedy is just not something that any of us would expect in Sydney, Australia, in somewhere where we feel so safe.
And that, I think, is also part of the problem, is that we don't think this happens here. We often think we're safe. It's Australia. We don't have guns. We don't have gun violence like the US does. But we have violence. This maybe doesn't happen on this scale all the time, but it happens on a smaller scale every day. Like every day this is happening here in this country. And then we're shocked when it happens on a larger scale.
The really fascinating thing I've watched unfold is when this initially happened, people trying to attribute motives to this person. Who was he? What was his ideology? Was it a political ideology, a religious ideology? And when you zoom out, it was male violence against women. And this is the conversation we keep having week after week after week. And for some reason, when it's male violence against women, we see it as kind of apolitical. There's no ideology. It's just a tragedy. But this is seriously something we need to confront, because women not feeling safe in a shopping centre is not something we should have to experience.
100%.
I'm hopeful that this is different, because usually men's violence against women is happening behind closed doors. It's happening to former partners or current partners by husbands, boyfriends, sons, that kind of thing. This is different. This is stranger violence, men's stranger violence in a public place, and it is impossible to ignore this. So my only kind of takeaway, apart from all of the heroes in this story that kind of stepped up, my only hopeful takeaway is that this is so loud that surely we can't ignore this any longer. Like surely, like this is the catalyst. This is where we change. I say that with a question mark because how can we not?
I guess that's the big hope, isn't it? And we just have to be able to maybe look back at this in 6 months' time and see if anything indeed has changed. But I think it's also fair to point out that there is another family who's also suffering, and that's the family of the man who did this awful thing, and who have come out in support of that incredibly brave police officer who went in and confronted him and understood the job that she was doing and understood that the only response she had was to take the life of their son. They've been fully supportive of her and hope that she's okay mentally. They've also lost a son to a system that allowed him to spiral into worse and worse mental health. I know we're all feeling pretty helpless, and that's the one thing that kind of hits us after anything like this happens is how can I help? What can I do? What can I change? But there are actually really practical things you can do in this particular situation, and one of those is to donate blood. The Australian Red Cross Lifeblood has put out a fresh appeal for people to donate in the wake of these horrible events in Bondi over the weekend. So if you are capable of doing so, please get along to your local donation centre. You can also find them online. So if you just Google the Australian Red Cross Lifeblood, you'll be able to figure out where your closest centre is and criteria for becoming a blood donor too, because not everybody can. So check it out.
And if you or someone you know is in need of support right now, there are services available to help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Lifeline is available on 13 11 14. Beyond Blue is available on 1300 22 46 36. We will put all the links in the show notes, but please seek help if you need it. This is such a hard time for many Australians, and there are so many people waiting to help. It's a huge news day today, from the dark to the equally as heavy. We've just had the judgment handed down in Bruce Lehrmann's defamation case against Network 10 and journalist Lisa Wilkinson. Now, you'll remember that Lehrmann faced a criminal trial in 2022 accused of raping then Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins in Parliament House in 2019. I feel like it's a sentence that we've repeated over and over again. It's a story that everyone knows, especially the women of Australia. That trial collapsed due to juror misconduct, and Higgins decided not to go through with a retrial because it was simply too traumatising. Her mental health had been affected too much. So the case we're talking about is a civil case that was brought about by Lehrmann. Claire, talk us through it. Justice Michael Lee gave the findings today. He started giving his judgment about 10:15 a.m. It went for many, many hours.
It certainly did. And it didn't start off great either, because he sat down, told us that it was a 324-page verdict that he was going to start reading, called the whole process an omni-shambles, and then the live feed from the courtroom went mute and no one could hear anything. So they had to adjourn court, fix a technical issue, and then he came back again and started delivering this verdict. Now, a lot of it is legal speak. So a lot of this verdict is breaking down every single piece of evidence and whether it was truthful or not. But at the heart of it all, there's the defamation case. Did Network 10 defame Bruce Lehrmann when they aired that interview with Brittany Higgins and Lisa Wilkinson in 2021? Network 10 had to kind of prove that they didn't identify him, which they didn't, but they did. And we'll get to that in a second. What Justice Lee found, and the thing that kind of overarchingly we were all waiting for, which is really interesting because Brittany Higgins is not even a player in this case. She's just a witness. She's not even involved in this case. But we were all waiting to find out whether Network 10's truth defence was what this would all hinge on. And in order to prove that truth defence, they had to prove that Bruce Lehrmann raped Brittany Higgins in Parliament House in 2019. So today, the federal court found on the balance of probabilities that Bruce Lehrmann did rape Brittany Higgins that night in Parliament House. Here's Justice Lee.
Mr. Lehrmann raped Miss Higgins. I hasten to stress this is a finding on the balance of probabilities. This finding should not be misconstrued or mischaracterised as a finding that I can exclude all reasonable hypotheses consistent with innocence. As I've explained, there's a substantive difference between the criminal standard of proof and the civil standard of proof, and as a tribunal of fact, I have only to be reasonably satisfied that Mr. Lehrmann has acted as I have found, and I am not obliged to reach that degree of certainty necessary to support conviction on a criminal charge.
So, Claire, what does that on the balance of probability mean? Is Bruce Lehrmann going to jail? Is he a criminal now?
No and no are the answer to those two questions. This is a civil case. It is not a criminal case. We, as Gem mentioned, had a criminal case in 2022, which fell over due to that juror bringing information into the jurors' room that they shouldn't. And then when that didn't happen for round 2 on the basis of Brittany Higgins' mental health, there has never been a criminal charge that Bruce Lehrmann has answered. He's always denied having any sexual contact with Brittany Higgins at all. This defamation case was brought against Network 10 and Lisa Wilkinson, but that truth defence meant that he also had to answer to whether he actually raped Brittany Higgins in Parliament House. And because that statement of it being the balance of probabilities, it's very similar to what we saw with Ben Roberts-Smith. He was going for defamation against several publications, but in doing that, on the balance of probabilities, that justice found that he was substantially true a war criminal. In this case, it is substantially true that Bruce Lehrmann is a rapist. And there's a lot of detail in this judgment that goes through what the consent was, whether consent was given, whether Brittany Higgins said no, what Bruce Lehrmann's intentions were. So there's a lot of breaking down in this, and it's very multi-layered. But no, he does not have a criminal conviction. He's just lost his defamation case against Network 10. And by losing that in the truth defence, it means that he is now someone who sexually assaulted Brittany Higgins, and we are allowed to legally say that.
What about Lisa Wilkinson? So this was about Network 10 and Lisa Wilkinson. How has this ended for her?
It's really interesting because the justice said that she was like a very well-spoken witness and that she obviously is very professional and very good at what she does. But he did say that her reliance on Network 10's legal team to tick off that speech that she gave at the Logies is where she's come undone. That legal team has let her down. The justice did say they should have known. They should have known that that speech was going to cause issues. And what issue it did cause was that it put in jeopardy Bruce Lehrmann's right to a fair trial. because that speech happened during the criminal trial back in 2022. You cannot do that. You cannot put someone's right to a fair trial in jeopardy. So in that instance, the justice has found that, yes, Bruce Lehrmann is entitled to damages, but that's kind of the secondary part of this. The main part of this was the truth defence about what happened that night in Parliament House.
And basically it was Lehrmann trying to clear his name. That's what this is. He's trying to clear his name because in most publications he is referred to a certain way and he doesn't want to be referred to like that. But he has failed, basically. That's what's happened.
Can this turn into a criminal trial again, given that a judge has now said on the basis of probability that Bruce Lehrmann raped Brittany Higgins? Both of you are living and breathing in the news far more than I am. Do you think it's possible this goes to a criminal trial?
That's up to the prosecution. That's up to Brittany Higgins. This is a huge day for Brittany Higgins, even though, as Claire said, she was not involved in this particular case. This is the first instance where she has some kind of whiff of justice. So this might have given her some renewed, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but maybe she will decide that it's worth going ahead and doing a retrial in the criminal court. But you know, we won't know. At the moment, the focus is obviously on this. And I think one of the most incredible things to take away from today is that judge, Justice Michael Lee, there's a lot of talk that he had a very trauma-informed response in the way he spoke about sexual assault. That is unheard of in our court systems, to be talking and understanding the nuanced way that sexual assault victims might behave after the fact. I want to give a quick example. He kind of rejected the so-called, and he called them rape myths about how an alleged victim should behave. And he regarded the evidence that Miss Higgins accepted a cup of coffee from Lehrmann and exchanged emails the following Monday. Those kinds of instances are used to discredit her, to say, how could she possibly have been raped because she emailed him on Monday? The judge said, I have little doubt that if she had been raped, that by time of these interactions, it's quite conceivable that Miss Higgins would have been driven by conflicting emotions, self-doubt, concern she would be humiliated by word leaking out to her colleagues and the question about the prudence of the behaviour. I haven't heard stuff like that in a public setting where a judge has said stuff like that.
This is a landmark case for Australian women, I think, and it is fascinating that it's a landmark case where we are hearing those statements on this scale for the first time, and it is a case that Bruce Lehrmann brought thinking he was getting justice. It feels like a really emotional day.
It does.
Just to go back to you asking about whether this will ever become a criminal conviction again, there is a different burden of proof between a defamation case and a criminal case. So this is not beyond reasonable doubt. That's what you have to achieve when you are in a criminal trial. Substantially true is different to beyond reasonable doubt. So it won't automatically mean a criminal trial happens, and Gem's right. It depends on the prosecution. It depends on Brittany Higgins. And at this point, it doesn't seem like that is going to eventuate. But you're right. The commentary we're hearing around this, Justice Lee basically said to everyone who was listening today, Brittany Higgins is a victim. She's just not the perfect victim that you expected her to be. And he mentioned how all of the things that she did in the aftermath of that night in 2019 could absolutely be construed as a victim of sexual assault trying to figure out her next steps, trying to figure out if she goes to police, trying to figure out her place in her workplace now that one of her colleagues is the man who sexually assaulted her. Like, it's such an amazing way for this judge to understand that sexual assault doesn't mean fight or flight. It doesn't automatically mean that you will break down and become a husk of a person, even though there were behavioural changes in Brittany Higgins, as was noted in the verdict. It's really interesting. And I think what Lisa Wilkinson said outside court today was, she said, I feel glad for the women of Australia today. And I think we're all feeling a little bit that way because there was a possibility that this verdict could have gone another way. And then we were thinking, where does that leave everybody else who's trying to fight this fight? Where does that leave everybody else who's sitting here currently right now thinking, do I, don't I? Do I pursue a criminal path? Do I pursue a civil case? Like, do I make that decision? I think it maybe has helped a lot of people make that choice today?
I think what today and this finding has brought us back to is what this story was always actually about. And over the last few years, both Lisa Wilkinson and Brittany Higgins have been dragged through the mud. There are certain media outlets that relentlessly attacked them, that went to their character, that seemed to imply that they were liars and manipulators. They have been destroyed and the most horrible things written and said about them. And now we can look at this and say, this all happened. This entire story happened because on the balance of probability by the federal court, Bruce Lehrmann raped Brittany Higgins in Parliament House. And I think we need to take a long, hard look at ourselves because this story veered so far from what was at its core, and somehow a woman saying the wrong thing or getting a book deal was made out to be worse than a potential rape.
The best quote, I think, to come from this entire judgment, kind of pinned on that arrogance, and I do use that word, that he had the confidence to kind of go forward and
it's audacity, isn't it? Like the absolute audacity to sue somebody for defamation.
Yeah. And now that he's been found to have done this, but the judge used the phrase, having escaped the lion's den, Mr. Lehrmann made the mistake of going back for his hat.
And the fact that, as you said before, Claire, we've seen it with Ben Roberts-Smith, these men doing awful things and then coming back to defend their reputation and then sitting in a courtroom going through all the evidence and saying, oh my God, you're actually worse than any of us thought that you were.
Because for so long they've gotten away with it. But today's judgment shows us that maybe that's changing.
Yeah, it's been a massive day in news and we'll be continuing this conversation over on the Quickie tomorrow morning. So if you want to get the latest updates and what legally happens from here, make sure you tune in tomorrow morning from 6 when the Quickie goes live.
And if this story has raised any issues for you, help is available on 1-800-RESPECT. Please seek help and take care. We will link resources in the show notes. Want unlimited Out Loud access? We drop episodes every Tuesday and Thursday exclusively for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get us in your ears 5 days a week, and a huge thank you to all our current subscribers. Sometimes when the world is really dark and scary, we need some lightness and silliness to try to balance it out. So that's what I wanted to bring today. And the ridiculous rabbit hole that I've been very deep in involves the disastrous rebrand of former Dance Mum star Jojo Siwa.
Oh, was she a Dance Mum's gal? I didn't know that.
Yes. She had the bow and the blonde hair and the silly outfits and the glitter.
And the high kicks.
Yeah. Such an enthusiastic dancer. Jojo became a reality star when she was 9, when she appeared on a Dance Mum spin-off, Abby's Ultimate Dance Competition. She was very blonde and very extroverted, and I saw a video the other day which said she has been bleaching her hair since she was 2 or 3.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yep. She's not blonde. She's got brown roots.
Well, that's not her fault.
I know.
There are some questions to be asked of Jojo Siwa's parents.
I bleached my hair once and nearly fried it off. How does someone bleach their hair from the age of 2 and not have just a bird's nest on their head?
How does she have any hair left?
I know. It's miraculous. We should do a podcast on that alone. She was then on Dance Mums, then launched a YouTube channel and released music. She toured around the world and she sold out huge stadiums for young girls and their parents. I remember Holly Wainwright having a conniption a few years ago when she was like, excuse me, my daughter is obsessed with someone named Jojo. She is now 20 and she's released a new song. And like many artists who kind of graduate from that Disney or Nickelodeon or child star fame, she is trying to be a grown-up and she's trying very, very hard. And ahead of her new song being released, which is called Karma, there was a warning. And this was actually before you had even heard the song. And so it was actually great publicity. She released this warning that said, this song was not made for children and it may be disturbing or offensive to some viewers.
So she's cutting off her children's supporters. That's it.
Yeah.
You're gone.
As someone who has watched it,
were you?
I wouldn't call it disturbing.
Were you just, oh my God, so shocked, so shocked. Then Karma was released and it is the single weirdest thing that has ever happened.
Karma's a bitch. I should've known better. If
itself is what can only be described as cringe. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I say that as a lot of the things I find joy in are cringe.
It just makes you want to have a giggle.
It does.
Like, not in a negative way. It just makes me want to giggle.
She's dry humping the floor. No. It's very I'm a bad girl, but glitter edition.
Is this like I'm a bad girl, Miley Cyrus twerking against Robin Thicke at the VMAs?
Weirder. And even Miley seemed more authentic. Oh. But Jojo's like, I'm a bad girl and here are some stars on my eye makeup.
Okay. And for reasons unknown, she's also like part mermaid.
Yes.
She comes out of the water and then starts kissing girls.
Yes. She doesn't kiss a girl. And that's what's interesting. It's this sexual stuff like humping, like dancing humping.
Oh, like fake kissing.
Yeah, but she doesn't actually kiss.
Oh, wow, that's interesting that I thought she kissed.
No, of course you did. Of course you did. That's what I mean about it's very contrived.
Yeah.
It's like I'll simulate humping, but I shan't kiss. And I'm a bad girl, but I won't swear. Is it a rebrand? Are you a bad girl, Jojo? The dancing it's been described as too much. She goes way too hard. We've got to share some videos of it on the Out Louders Instagram because she's just committed. She talks about the song like she wrote it, but she didn't write it. She just bought it. It existed like 10 years ago. And it's her behaviour in promoting it that everyone is talking about. In an interview, she was asked if she was taking inspiration from Miley Cyrus and Taylor Swift, and she said,
honestly, I look at some of the generation above them, Michael Jackson, Prince, Elton, Bowie, they are, and of course Gaga. I mean, take all the inspiration from Gaga, but those people for me that were just not afraid. Elvis was the first to not be afraid to be different, to not be afraid to be out there, to not be afraid to take a risk. I mean, the shit Freddie Mercury used to wear on stage, you'd be like, what? No, but now it's like people are afraid to be different, and we're all different. We're all weird. We're all a little f***ed up. And I think that's okay to show that.
She also claimed that this is the beginning of a new genre of music called gay pop.
I wanted to start a new genre of music. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, it's called gay pop. Songs like Applause by Lady Gaga. It's the On My Own Miley Cyrus. Can't Be Tamed Miley Cyrus. Karma. It's that world of music.
Then she had to backtrack on that because everybody lost their shit. And they were like, hey, gay pop has been around for a really long time, such as Elton John, which you mentioned.
It's the confidence.
And then she said, okay, I might be like the CEO or like CMO. I could be the chief marketing officer of gay pop. Another quote in an interview for Billboard was, no one has made this dramatic of a change yet. No one has made, in my generation, this extreme of a switch. She did an entire interview on the Call Her Daddy podcast with a fringed hat that was absurd. And all the comments are like, she didn't wear that hat the whole time. Yes, she did. Gemma, you're just as obsessed with this Jojo story as I am. What do you think of her rebrand from child star to very bad girl adult?
I'm currently in the TikTok hole of watching other dancers do the same choreography.
Yes,
are you in that hole?
Yes.
And I can't look away.
And doing it in weird contexts. So they're just in their house and then they break into this absurd dance.
I think for me it's the earnestness that I'm fascinated by. It reminds me of, I'm revealing myself here, but I was a theatre gal. I went to a performing arts high school in Newcastle.
Theatre.
Shout out HSPA. And it is so my high school. It is, hi, mum and dad, look at me. I'm hitting every step. It's that. It's the overconfidence, the obsession with her own rebrand that I love. I love her for it.
I know.
I wish my kids had this much confidence when they were older. Part of me thinks that it's all orchestrated. Like this was her plan. Jojo is looking at the Mileys, and I know she's compared herself publicly, but look at Miley. Miley was ridiculed for a lot of the things that she did in her rebrand, and now
she's everything.
She is everything. Everyone loves Miley. She is what she wanted to be. She transformed from being a child star to an adult pop star. And we've admitted it. We're giggling. It's funny. So I think Jojo will come out the other end of all of this craziness and her fringed hat and her stars on her eyes, and it will mellow out and she will succeed. Like I think there is a PR person behind the strings going, yeah, Jojo, this will work.
And the interesting thing is the people who have made the film clip, who have done the choreography, who have been involved in all of this, are the same people who have been working with her whole career. So it's not a rebrand in any actual technical sense of her being like, I'm leaving my childhood behind and doing this on my own. She's saying, come on, guys, let's rebrand me. I'm going to wear black glitter now.
Okay, I just watched the video.
And Claire,
the humping is like impressive. Like there's not just humping, there's flip humping, there's spin humping, and you're right, there's almost kissing. It's very dark, it's very like edgy, but it's like super exaggerated. Imagine if in real life you were like a real child star and you had to one day come out and kind of announce that you were no longer a child star, that you were in fact a grown woman now, and all that awkward stuff you do in that interim period, which thankfully for me, being the age that I am, was never caught on social media. It has to be done like in this big grand gesture, like my womanhood has arrived and I no longer am the child you once knew. Like it's so dramatic and it's so weird that we force these girls in particular to do this, because the boys who are child stars one day turn up as men and then we feel weirdly attracted to them like we're not supposed to be. And it's like these girls, though, they have to go like, I'm not a girl anymore. You have to leave that person behind. I'm a woman now. And I can see what she's doing, but it's weird.
The other thing about Jojo is that her absurdity, her earnestness, her extroversion. I saw somebody say, whatever J-Lo has, which is this strange earnestness about her own career, Jojo Siwa has, which is...
Maybe she's the prodigy.
I know. I think they have a club where they sit there and go, J-Lo, you know how you did Jiggly and that was a work of art? I am Jojo and this is my film clip for Karma and it is also a work of art. And they talk about being artists. I think they're part of the same strange club where it's like, I don't want to be rude, but what you're creating isn't, how do we put it, highbrow.
I think Jojo's film clip and everything that she's done since is so out of the box that it can't be real.
Yeah.
Like it can't be real. That fringed hat, the comments on the red carpet, the dry humping, surely this is part of the ploy.
Isn't there a beautiful space in this world for things that are not highbrow? Like, I don't know about you, but I have the taste buds of basic bitch half the time. So if I see something that's lowbrow, I don't necessarily go to the critics page and see them give like Rotten Tomatoes 4 out of 10 or whatever. I'm like, I don't care. I liked it. There is space in the world for lowbrow art. I'm happy to consume it. I don't know about you. Bring it on, Jojo.
Absolutely. Outlouders, if you have not seen the film clip yet, if you do not have Come as a Bitch stuck in your head on repeat, which I do, please go and watch it and let us know what you think in the Outlouders Facebook group. It's a TikTok rabbit hole for the ages. Please spend your time wisely. What's some of the best career advice you have ever received? Well, on last week's episode, Holly, Mia and Jessie revealed some of their best career advice. And here is a sneak peek. Just say yes, and the person who told me
That's
this.
That's my favourite.
And they said this is not popular anymore.
That's so funny. That's what I've written down because when I was thinking about my best career advice that I was given, it was just say yes. And then I wrote down problem, boundaries. I don't mean say yes to everything that anyone asks you to do. Like, can you pick up my shoes from the cobbler? That's a thing anymore. Or like, whatever. What I mean is when someone says, oh, hey, this interview's come up with blah, blah. And it's like, feel the fear and say yes.
Yes. A link to that episode will be in the show notes.
Well, friends, if you want to hear some more from the three of us, little stand-ins that you've had today, you can check out the podcast that we actually do for a living every other day. For myself, it's the Quickie, Mamamia's daily news podcast. For true crime lovers, Gemma Bath does a fantastic job on true crime conversations. It'll get you right into the heart of some of the best known crimes with the people who know the most about them. And of course, Clare Stephens, who is on But Are You Happy, which is top of charts all over the shop because it is so bloody glorious, and Cancelled, which is one of the funniest podcasts around. And the new one, Baby Bubble, which is really exciting. So go and check all of us out on all of those other podcasts. You won't regret it, I promise. Thanks for listening to Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. This episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman with audio production by Leah Porges. Bye.
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 Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and want to support us, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so.